Hi guys, welcome to episode 7 of Coffee and ABA, where we're discussing all things applied behavioral analysis over a nice cup of coffee. So, we've covered the functions of behavior. We've talked about that escape, that attention seeking, that access / tangible, and that sensory and automatic function. But now we're going to talk about how we determine those functions. So previously talking about data, I know that I said I would touch on it again, is ABC data. The antecedent, behavior, and consequence data. And what that typically looks like is a blank table that has a column for the antecedent, a column for the behavior, and a column for the consequences. And then we fill it in. So for that antecedent, we're looking for stuff like, what's the setting look like? How many people are there? Who's there? What time of day it is? What's going on in the environment that might be a potential trigger to the behavior? And then we look at the behavior itself as objective and measurable. And then finally, we look at that consequence, how and what followed up that behavior. So for example, it could be 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The kiddo is playing on their iPad on the sofa. They don't have a lot of attention, but people are kind of in the room, migrating around, and mom walks up to the child and says, okay, it's my turn with the iPad. The behavior itself is the kiddo falling forcefully to the floor, kicking their feet, screaming at above conversation level, and then crying with some tears. The consequence could be, mom gives the iPad back. Well, the hypothesized function for that would be access to the iPad. And that varies and can change, but we take all of that, we graph it, and we determine the function of the behavior based on reoccurring instances like that. And it's possible that as we get further along into treatment, that we could say, oh, you know what, it's not quite access, but there's an escape component because every time mom takes away the iPad, she also tells the kid to go do something that they don't want to do. So we take all of that into consideration, and plans are very fluid and change just as the kiddos change and grow and learn new skills. We have a formal way of identifying the function of behavior called an FBA, a functional behavior assessment. And it's a systematic process for understanding the reasons behind the behavior, so that why, that function. It aims to identify the function of the behavior, and we use it specifically for a little bit of those more challenging behaviors where ABC data isn't always clear. We conduct these FBAs in a setting, and we trial the different functions. So for example, to trial the escape function, we would have a child in a room, and we're just engaging normally or anything like that, and then I would put a worksheet in front of the child and say, write your name. And let's say we're looking for that specific behavior of hitting with a closed fist. If the child hits me, nope, you don't have to work, you don't have to write your name, it's okay. And then a little bit later, I would represent the demand. Okay, write your name. They hit me again. Great. You don't have to write your name. And what that is that's testing to see if that hypothesized function continues over time. For access to something, we would be playing in that same room, and I would go ahead and hold all of the toys to myself. Child hits me again with a closed fist, and I go, oh yeah, here's the toys. When it comes to attention, I would be talking and engaging, and then I would just stop and sit there. No attention. If the child hit me with a closed fist, then I'd immediately give attention again. The sensory automatic side of the function would be us stepping out of the room, and obviously still observing through cameras, two-way mirror, anything like that, and still keeping an eye on the child. And if the behavior continues with no one in the room, in our alone condition, we would hypothesize that there is a sensory component to that. FBAs are one of those things that are a little bit harder, as we would need to set up a setting where we could test each function. There are some different ways we can do it using QABFs, which are questionnaires that we do with parents, where various questions apply to each function. We also have the different interview styles that we do, and our observations too. And so as we start to understand the behavior a little bit more, and we can hypothesize that function, then we can start teaching appropriate replacement skills to assist the child or the individual in navigating their environment and potentially decreasing that behavior. So I hope you enjoyed today's lecture on the functions of behavior and how we collect that data, and I'll see you next time.